What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got James from Chrome Waves. Thank you for your time today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yep. It's so awesome to have you here. So, you have quite an impressive discography from just the last couple of years with The Cold Light of Despair and Grief Observed and, the splits you did with Grid Failure. I mean, first question is always first. When it comes to getting inspired to write, do, ideas come out of nowhere sometimes, or is there, a preconceived idea of how you want to write music for Chrome Waves?
Oh, that's definitely a good question because it's changed totally. To kind of break it down into something that's not like 45 minutes long and the whole history of it. Initially, with the first LP, Jeff basically presented me with a mostly tracked, completed album with no vocals, and he was just like, "Hey, do you have any ideas to add to this instrumentally? And if you do, go ahead and add them and send it my way, and I'll tell you if I like it, and throw some vocals on it." So that was how that first process went. But after that, it really kind of came down to I kind of had like a library of demos of stuff that over the last maybe like year and a half I had written, like 2017 through 2019, in that range. And I kind of just threw as much at Jeff as I could and asked him, hey, what do you think about this track? What do you think about that? And we picked basically what felt like it was cohesive / the direction that we were kind of aiming to go in. We kind of have a motto for writing, and that was basically like we've done black metal for most of our careers, and we wanted to kind of combine some of that, but with the enjoyment that we have in like more catchy, poppier music. And when I say poppier, obviously, I'm not talking about like top 40s hits. We're talking about like Slow Dive. We did a cover of Slow Dive, and that was the first cover actually I did with them, and that's the first time I've actually really covered a song and released it. Besides one track called Wolfhead's Tree about 7 years ago by a folk metal band, Forefather. But at this point, we kind of just we get inspired by. I usually drive down to Indianapolis and we whip up a project and just start going at it. And really, even the new album was done in like 2 sessions. We basically sat down together twice and recorded the whole thing.
That's incredible. Like, what I'm curious about is like when it does like. Do you have do these represent like an emotion that you and like the band were feeling at that particular time? Your entire catalog. Do you try to capture a moment with the music in a way?
Yeah. Yes, and no. I will say that certain albums, yes. So, A Grief Observed, absolutely, was kind of like a snapshot of like the end of 2017 into 2018. And while I didn't actually like complete most of the recording for that album until the end of 2018. It was kind of based around that time period because I had written most of the lyrics prior to going into recording the album. And the other, like the splits and stuff, they're kind of snapshots of like weeks or days where I was feeling inspired by something I'd read or something I'd watched, and that was kind of the basis for what my mindset was writing the lyrics in that per se. But musically, I also try to fit that. I'm no expert here, and I'm just a kid writing music for fun. Sometimes it's random, sometimes it's not. I will say that the new album is a little less, like, A Grief Observed had a clear theme, and this new album jumps around a little bit more, whereas A Grief Observed was almost kind of like a story of a journey, so...
Mm-hmm. So, since A Grief Observed was do you recommend I recommend that you don't listen to that album on shuffle, right? If there's sort of like a linear sort of story behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna dissuade anybody from listening to it however they want, but yeah, it makes sense if you listen to it in order, in terms of like lyrical progression, and musical progression actually.
Mm-hmm. Could the concept or maybe a meaning determine the outcome of the music itself, or does music need to be laid down before there's ever any lyrics or even a subject matter being addressed with it?
Ooh, that's tough. I've kind of, I'm not going to say struggled because it's not like I wake up every morning, then it's racking my brain, but that's something that I have struggled with a lot of. In general, my preferred method of working would just be write the music and then go into writing the lyrics. In fact, I usually prefer writing like an entire album's music before I go in and try to like write lyrics to it. But I also kind of like writing vocal. Like I wrote probably half of the next album's lyrics on the spot by just hitting record, and then I had like a melody in mind before I sang it, and then kind of came up with the lyrics as I was going. So I did end up retracking it. It's not like I just like one shotted the whole thing. I'm not that good.
Yeah. Nothing could be more heartbreaking, right, than having like the best lyrics ever and then seeing how they're always like one syllable over or under the actual arrangement.
Oh yes, absolutely. I'm struggling with that right now, writing some other stuff too.
Well, because like kind of going back to capturing a moment, that's really what I loved about Cold Light of Despair, is that it just like it was so easy to keep up with, but it really did capture like a snapshot. And the song like Bound compared to like a song like When the Sun Hits or Push the Sky Away, like it really does represent something. But do you find that maybe the harder or the longer you work on something, the harder it is to actually maintain a moment?
Yeah, definitely. And I struggle with that in other projects sometimes when it's like years between when a track was like initially demoed and when it's finally getting to a point where like, all right, well, it's time to actually track this thing or actually like perform these lyrics, and you're like, I'm not going to get as good a take because I'm not into this as much as I was before. And one thing I really appreciate with working with Jeff is just the fact that we basically go in and we keep like 90% of our first and second takes on most stuff.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of refreshing to work with somebody who's just as motivated as you are, to basically get things done in a timely manner as well, and not just wait and dilly dally. Because while I think there's definitely like a huge positive, like it's not like I take like a demo and then just like the next day I call it done. But there is some advantage to like waiting and sitting on something and coming back to it quite a bit later. But I'm not going to call it impulsive. I'm also impulsive, I guess, in that manner, and I want to finish something, not just wait around.
Yeah, absolutely. And being that, you're such a prolific artist, too, like, if you come up with an idea, you just want to get right to it immediately because you're afraid you might lose it, like, if you wait too long or something like that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, of course, you've also done a couple splits with Grid Failure as well, and like, has working with Grid Failure also maybe have taught you some new things on how to incorporate newer elements into Chrome Waves?
For me personally, because I'm just not the instrumentalist, I would say on my end not so much, but on Jeff's end it has, and I've been really on board with the ideas that he's brought to the table, especially with the new album that we have coming out too. So I'm not a keyboard player, but I did try lessons for like a year when I was 26, and which was just a couple of years ago. But Jeff definitely brought a lot more sounds to the next stuff, and that started with A Cold Light of Despair, really, and has kind of continued with it. So I've been pretty on board with all of that because it's not stuff that I've ever done in the past before, and I just like not repeating albums.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I've always thought that, like, not to label you guys by any means, but I consider Chrome Waves to be an experimental project. So I'd imagine trying new things is almost kind of like essential at this point, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, basically the next album's not going to sound anything like the last one, with the exception of like there are still some verse chorus style songs. Like otherwise, it's not going to sound much alike.
Okay. Is there ever maybe like, do you try to maybe keep some element of consistency though in your catalog to kind of maybe like tie all the albums together, or is that not even a thought process in the writing process?
I wouldn't say it's a conscious thought, but I don't think you can like escape I mean, you can, but it's hard to escape without consciously making it a point, wanting to sound completely different and going a completely different direction. I've been writing for like a more like rock shoegaze project that kind of sounds in some elements like Chrome Waves, but and it ended up some of it kind of crossing over with some of the material with Chrome Waves too, and I ended up dropping some songs from it and actually using it for this next record and stuff. But it's just one of those things where you're like, I could use it for this, or I could use it for this, and it can end up this way, or it could end up totally different when I work on it with somebody else. And yeah, so I mean, I think consciously we don't try to do too much, but I know that with the plans for the we have another EP that we're already working on for later this year. It will sound a lot more cohesive than I think the record will.
Well, yeah, I mean, one artist I actually kind of thought of, because Cold Light of Despair is actually what I discovered Chrome Waves on, and I thought a little bit of Astronoid. You ever heard of that band?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I thought a little bit of that, but I also thought of that shoegaze element you're working with, like Drab Majesty or Tennis System or something like that.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of Drab Majesty for sure. So
yeah, you should listen to Tennis System.
Ooh, you should definitely email me that after we're done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, their album is incredible. But we kind of touched upon it before, but you mentioned, inspiration does come from multiple different sources, right? And I think that could be evident in the sound of Chrome Waves in a way, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm not sure. I can't pick Jeff's brain here in the moment about this, but Jeff and I come from very different backgrounds in terms of inspiration and how we get inspiration for writing music. So it's pretty unique when we try to combine that.
Yeah. Is there ever I'd imagine coming from different backgrounds, it's almost do you think maybe if people got to know you both very well, they could tell, okay, this is this person's idea, that's that person's idea? Is it quite evident that you guys come from different backgrounds?
Yeah, I think the only thing we have somewhat similar in common is maybe our preferred tuning, guitar tuning. That's at least similar. But otherwise, it's pretty easy to pick it apart, I think.
Yeah, is that the dog I hear in the background?
Yeah, that's all three of them.
Yep. Did a siren go by?
Probably, yeah. We live off a main Broadway street, and the fire department's just a mile away.
Yeah, you were telling me before we started rolling that you got dogs in the background. I'm waiting to hear them howl in the background. It's gonna make this interview so much more metal.
They started just a second ago, but then it turned into a normal bark. So.
Oh, I'm disappointed, man.
Sorry.
You ready for the most difficult question of the interview?
Sure.
Yeah. How do you know when a song is done?
Oh God, you don't. You totally don't. But I was saying, I can be impulsive, and sometimes, oh man, I'm definitely dealing with this right now because we're mixing. And I'm one of those guys that can be more easily swayed and be like, yeah, you know what, I'm cool with that. That sounds good enough to me. And then other people will come in and be like, well, you need to change the EQ of the cymbals. They need to be above 6 to 10 hertz. And I'm like, I know a little bit about that because I do self-recording, obviously, and stuff, and I mix well enough to make feasible demos to pass to other people that don't sound like they were recorded in Norway in 1988 or anything. So, yeah, it's such a hard question because I feel like songs are done way before everybody else does, and sometimes that's a positive and sometimes that's a negative because I think my other band members will bring some really good ideas to the table when I'm like, oh no, I'm totally satisfied with this.
Yeah, I've always was suggesting that artists may do a series where they do an album with just one song and different versions of it the entire time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really cool idea that I've been trying to kind of press. I've also had this idea for a long time that I wanted to take a couple of people just to a cabin because I live in Minnesota and just hit record for a week and see what kind of album we come up with and just release it from there. Just do all of it in 1 week.
Yeah, or have something recording while you guys are all sleeping and see if anybody talks in their sleep or makes a noise or something. That sounds plain creepy, but
I definitely do. So
yeah, because I've always thought there's because people argue what's the difference between music and noise, but I almost don't see a difference. I feel there's a great use of noise as well, on Cold Light of Despair or something like that. That really makes it I don't feel you just capture a moment, but I feel you capture an environment or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, and it's pretty. That album is really well layered.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Is it representative, like when you're capturing like an environment in your music? Is it almost kind of like representative of what was going on at that particular time? Like kind of going back to the capturing a moment thing, but like are you like looking at your surroundings and taking inspiration from nature in a way?
Definitely. I mean, I don't live in any like backwoods part of the state of Minnesota. Actually live in the southeast corner, which is populated. So there are people here, but yeah, I mean, it's now like there's no leaves on the trees yet. The grass is growing. I might actually have to mow in the near future, which is quite a bit earlier. But we've also gotten a foot and a half of snow about this time of year, and it snowed on Easter about a foot. So it's definitely an inspiration. I think my moods swing quite a bit in terms of writing when it comes to warm versus winter months.
Mm-hmm. And
So capturing a moment, yes, definitely.
yeah, and kind of going back to like the meaning of the music, and we also talked about this a little bit too. But I'd imagine it's also open to interpretation, right?
Yes, 100%. And especially even with lyrics, I've never, besides with A Grief Observed, I've never tried to persuade anyone of anything or put any secret hidden, or not even secret, but any blatant messages to people in most records that I've done, going forward or in the past. That's not my intent. I want people to be able to come up with whatever story they have in their own head when listening to something. Because I mean, I was always an avid reader growing up, and I still do audiobooks quite a bit, but that's never my intention. I want people to see and create their own images.
Yeah. Any specific reading, any specific books now that you're like into?
Yeah, right now let's see. So I just finished the Malazan series in December, and then I picked up, and this is going to sound super nerdy, but I like fantasy mostly. I picked up the Elminster series, which is a part of Dungeons and Dragons lore. And I'm currently in I think it's the 6th book, Lord of Chaos, the Wheel of Time series.
That's awesome. Do you like philosophy books at all?
Yeah, I did go to school for psychology and philosophy a little bit, so I mean, I've been to like the Kierkegaard Library at St. Olaf, and I've done a little bit of study with Kierkegaard.
All right. You should look up the author Simon Van Boy.
Okay.
Yeah, he phenomenal philosophical writer.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this discussion. I hope you and the dogs and everybody's all safe in Minnesota during this rather uncertain time. Is there just anything else with Chrome Waves that you would like to promote in terms of new music? I mean, we were supposed to see you in Vitus in June, but I'd imagine that's not going to happen at the moment.
Yeah, we're like in the middle of the process of contacting and being in contact with all the venues. Some already reached out and everything, but we were trying to hold off to see if the prognosis would get any better. But it's quite obvious that even if things are technically open, it's not going to be the right time. But in any case, we hopefully are going to be doing some decent amount of shows in September. We are currently mixing our next LP, Where You Live, which might or might not be out depending around the time that we go out in September. We were hoping to release it in June with the tour, but it's probably not the right timing. So hopefully we have some new music out in the next month or two here as we finish up the mixing process. Otherwise we'll probably be dropping another EP later this year as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Chrome Waves. New stuff coming very soon. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.